from my old friend Fred Cinnamon. He found something that was said by Irving Thalberg. He said, the studio has made a lot of money and they could afford to lose some. I think the time has come where the money people can afford to lose a little money, taking risks with these new filmmakers.
Is that really your idea of how to run a newspaper?
I don't know how to run a newspaper, Mr. Thatcher. I just try everything I can think of.
We're not feeling too good about Xbox today, Gene. I've been saying for a long time now, you can't spell Microsoft without a $sign, because this is really all they think about over there at Microsoft. And don't worry, I'm going to keep it consistent. Sony does the same thing. I've called out Sony a lot for the $sign in their name too. You can't spell Sony without S. And you got a lot of people saying the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to save console gaming, but you got a $sign there too. I mean, fingers crossed we get a Super Nintendo 2 or something, but the console gaming market, especially being ran by these huge publishers, it's never going to get better. The PlayStation 3 era was actually a really good time for video games. If you played on PlayStation, you had online services for free. You had actual innovative game design happening at that time. And this is why I've been vocal against remakes and remasters and DLCs. People will say, oh no, PlayStation 5 has games. Well, yeah, if you count the Spider-Man DLC, God of War Ragnarok is essentially a DLC. And whatever games they do have are only timed exclusives, and then they go to PC or they just go to the other platforms anyway. And this is what happened with Ghostwire Tokyo. Now, I actually did play Ghostwire when it came out, so I'm one of the people that can complain about this, because you have a lot of people that will act like they're pissed off that a studio gets shut down, which is what Microsoft has done today. They've announced that they're shutting down Tango, Gameworks, and one of Arcane Studios' branches. I think Arcane has many different studios, but Austin is being shut down. And that begs the question, did Redfall come from the internal decision making at that studio, or was that some kind of shovelware for the Xbox Game Pass? Oh, hey guys, here's an actual first party Xbox game that no one enjoyed. They spend all this money on acquisitions. $70 billion can go to Activision just to buy legacy third party franchises like Call of Duty, which I think is dwindling. I suppose it still makes money, but I think that's just gamers that don't ever want to branch out of their comfort zones, and they probably just hate themselves if you're still playing Call of Duty on an annual basis and that's all you play. I think even the hardcore fans are sick and tired of that. But money talks. Money is all that they care about. This is why I wanted to show this quote at the very beginning of the video from David Lean, saying that the money people, this is my favorite description of the people that run these corporations, the money people. They look at us as $signs, potential $signs, so we should look at them as nothing less than the money people. The money people are the ones that control everything. This is why I said a long time ago, there is no such thing as an indie game. Indie games do not actually exist, because even if you're able to design a game with only a small number of people, what happens when you need to market the game? There's always a marketing cost. Someone's got to pick up the bill for the marketing cost. Someone has to pick up the bill for the distribution, and you have a lot of people saying that Steam as a storefront, just to use Steam as an example, people will say, well, you have plenty of indie games on Steam. No, you don't. You may have games that were independently developed, but ultimately, when you sign a deal, when you sign your game away to the publisher, they own the rights to the work. They own the rights to the music, even, in many cases. every component of the game goes to the publisher. So Nintendo is the same as Sony and Microsoft. Even worse in some cases, because they don't even give you actual good hardware to play their games on. And you see how they feel about emulation. You see how they feel when anyone wants to post a snippet of their music. So there is no indie game market, not really. Yes, there are good games that are being developed outside of the AAA space, but money is what gets things made, and you have to have people who are there to nurture the project even from the beginning if you want to get really good games. And so, yes, the MO is completely off for the entire industry. It isn't even just on a case-by-case basis on what they're doing with certain franchises and not doing with others, and with each genre. If a game cannot have microtransactions, if it can't find a way to sneak those in there, even in single-player games, you see what Capcom does with, they've been doing this for years with many of their games, not just Dragon's Dogma. This aggressive monetization practice for all these games, and ownership. I don't like ownership. I don't like copyright. This is the main argument that I'm making, that the copyright holders, it's at the discretion of the copyright holders to do what they want. And yes, sometimes it is the fans that fail the franchises. If you stop playing the games and then come back later and say, oh, I wish I could play that again, you wonder why. But just like there's a cycle to everything in life, and sometimes people do want to go back and play games, and the backwards compatibility is one thing that it's probably the lowest denominator of actual consolation to own an Xbox, that you can play maybe 3, 4, 5 games that were ever good on Xbox, and you can play those backwards compatible, at least for the time being. I don't know what the future of that's going to look like. And then Sony, they just want to remaster games that came out a few years ago and ignore the games that were good from the PlayStation 3 era. They do not care about emulation either. It's weird that Last of Us got a PlayStation 4 version, but they can't bring other PlayStation 3 games from the early life cycle. They can't even put those... you can stream them with PlayStation Plus, which is a scam, by and large, but you can't own them physically. So this latest development, the same thing with Helldivers with Sony making people sign up for a PlayStation account, I can understand why they would do that, but they should have been upfront about that and not force that and blindsided people, force that on people at the last minute. You can see that the publishers don't care about the fans, they don't care about gamers, and they don't even care about their own developers unless they're making money. And I think that everything that these companies touches ultimately goes down the gutter. You can see with Overwatch, they're starting to ban people as soon as Activision becomes a Microsoft subsidiary. You can see a new level of censorship, people getting banned on Overwatch just for talking in the chat, which is one of the things that makes that game really funny to play. It is very toxic, but it's very competitive. What do you expect? There are so many terrible practices in this industry, but the bottom line is the money people can afford to lose a little money, and you see these bloated AAA games that have really no soul. I don't think the people making them, I don't think the people that made Spider-Man 2 enjoy that game. There are little moments here and there, but that's not a game that screams fun to me. Again, the marketing cost that goes to something like Spider-Man, you wonder why Studio Japan failed. This is something I was ranting about the other day. If Studio Japan failed, that's partially because Sony did not market the game, the studio and their games well enough, other than Bloodborne, which was a sleeper hit. It obviously From Software was the main force behind developing the game, but you have people that haven't even played Bloodborne that would love to play that game, and that's actually a bit of a debacle why Sony doesn't just remaster that game. But that's a game that succeeded because Sony at least marketed it at the time as one of the great PlayStation 4 exclusives, and the other games were not marketed well. So when you spend all this money to market a game like Spider-Man that everybody knows exists anyway because it's Spider-Man, this is one of the reasons that these smaller projects fail, at least commercially. If everybody that buys the game enjoys it, or the vast majority of people enjoy it, then that should be a win. But this is not the way that the industry works today. It's an industry. It's no longer about innovation and figuring out what kinds of worlds can be created in games. It's all about the money. It's all about the dollar signs. And you can't spell Microsoft without a dollar sign. And you can't spell Sony without one. And fuck it, you might as well, put a dollar sign on the Nintendo Switch too. That's probably going to be more bullshit. Terrible for games preservation. You can't even play more than one game on the Switch, apparently. If they actually made a console, they actually invested in a console, I think that would be great for Nintendo. Yeah, gaming is just not being taken seriously by the people who run the apparatus behind it all. There's an oversaturation of games. I'm not going to defend the so-called indie industry either, because you have a bunch of garbage on that front as well. It's hard to sift through all the garbage, whether it's AAA bloat or the oversaturation of the indie market. There's a lot of experimentation, yes, and there's a lot of good games that will go under the radar, of course. But the big players in the industry are the worst offenders. And they don't care about you, and they don't care about even the people that are trying hard to make good games. They don't care about these people. As long as people keep buying these subscription services, I think that's the main problem. Game Pass was supposed to be a great thing for gamers, but it doesn't seem to be very useful for developers, because if the games that are on there are really successful, then you shouldn't be shutting these studios down. I mean, Hi-Fi Rush, you've even put that on PlayStation, and you reward them for all of that hard work in making a game that's actually a game, and then you shut down the studio. So the best way I can illustrate this is we got to go back in time and look at Citizen Kane, listen to Sir David Lean. These are the problems that have always existed, but the consumers have got to start waking up. You see that Sony did actually backtrack on Helldivers. I think if people start, I really don't know. I would stop giving money to these subscription services at the very least. The headline here should not be that gaming is dead, but certainly the creativity in gaming is being stifled more than ever, because you have a combination of no new ideas from a lot of game designers. They don't have any new ideas, or they're being forced into making the same recycled garbage like Sony's doing with Insomniac. They used to be one of the great developers of all time, making innovative games. People will say, oh, Resistance was kind of a Halo clone. Yes, but Resistance did a lot of the things that Halo did better, which is true. And even if it didn't, that was in an era where we needed more competitive FPS games of a certain kind. And now you see we've gone through the Battle Royale trend, where every game wanted to just put a BR mode in. Look at Battlefield 2042 with a terrible attempt at that. It's just astonishing how we went from how games have accelerated on a technical level, or I mean, I can't really say accelerated because it's all about graphics now, and it takes 10 years just to make a new game because it's all about photorealism instead of actually designing a game that's fun to play with as a toy that doesn't waste your time. Gamers don't seem to care. They keep buying the sequels, they keep buying the spin-offs, they keep buying the remakes and the remasters. So we're really all at fault here. But it all has to do with that dollar sign, and that has to be the deciding factor. We should not be paying more for less. $70 is a scam. There's not really any good $70 games coming out, or if there are, they could just as well be $60. So yes, the money people can afford to lose money, and they can only afford to lose money once we stop giving it to them, because if we keep giving them money, they're not going to think about how to restructure their plan at all. So gaming's not dead. It's not really a new headline, but I hope that people stop with the console wars. I like Sony, but Sony's full of shit too. And I say that as a lifelong gamer of Sony, and as a shareholder. You can kind of see from both sides of the perspective why revenues can be increased and you can charge more money for everything and maybe make money on top of that. But as a consumer, I hate almost everything that Sony's doing. Microsoft is just as bad, if not worse. And they do not have my goodwill because I've never been an Xbox user and they have never been on the level of Sony or Nintendo. But for them to be the biggest company on earth and lay people off is just indefensible. I hope people do not think that they give a shit about you as a gamer. They do not. Sony is not looking much better on that front, nor is Nintendo. Nothing new. I don't know. It just has to be said. I hope more people wake up and, or at least vocal. And like I said, you have to vote with your wallet. It's the best way to vote is with your wallet. I hope that the revenues start to go down for these companies. To me, it would always be more obvious that you make a good game, no microtransactions, just sell a good game to people. And instead of selling fewer copies of games for more money, you should just sell more copies for less money. And the most important stat that matters is how many people actually buy the game. Look at Minecraft, look at some of these free-to-play games. Minecraft is, I don't know how much it costs to buy Minecraft, but it's always been cheap. It's never been more than maybe $20 for Minecraft, and the most popular game ever because you can sell more for less, and that's the way it should be. Not $70, not $100 for these DLCs with the game and the subscription services. So just remember, they don't care about you, so you have to watch your money, watch your own wallet, and watch your own games library, because there's nothing stopping them from taking that from us too, unless you've got emulation. So yeah, I'm just gonna put this out there because, you know, I don't like the console wars. They're all equally terrible, all of these publishers.